Hi, I'm Lady Charmaine, and my guest today is a true Hollywood success story. He is an Emmy-nominated producer and veteran television programming and production executive. He has produced top-rated shows like TV One's R&B Divas, Lisa Ray, The Real McCoy, and the award-winning docuseries Unsung. And he's here today to talk about his latest show, Bells, premiering in 2013, and his rise to executive success. Help me welcome Mr. Jubba Seyyid to the show. Welcome to the show, Jubba.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Lady Charmaine.
Thank you. Now, I read about you, because I did some research, and I read that they are calling you the executive of the future. What does that mean to you, and does it put any pressure on you?
Well, there's certainly pressure because I think there's pressure all the time, whether it's of the future or the present. I think when we talk about the executive of the future, we're just talking about, I think networks across the board are hiring more executives who have a production background, who've actually been producers, been in the trenches, and have decided that it's better to have executives who have that experience and just have the traditional experience, which is, working their way up through the ranks, starting off as an assistant and then going from there to becoming an executive. So the value is much greater, and I think that's what we talk about. We reference the executive of the future.
Well, that's a really good thought right there. And, one thing I wanted to say, because you are the senior director of programming and production at TV One, which is one of my favorite channels. And that's just not to brag, but it is. I love the show and I love the channel. And TV One has built a brand. And I say that because whenever I turn to the channel, or whenever you announce a show that's coming on TV One, a brand new show, I know that I can expect a quality show. And what's the secret behind finding good quality shows?
Well, it's about putting your heads together, because we get pitches quite a bit from, hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of people, whether it be producers and agents and all kinds of content providers. And I think what determines a quality show is putting your head together with your team and determining, based on the money that you have to put that thing together, what you're willing to put on the screen with talent, with production value, and with if it's a scripted show, whether it's got a great script, or if it's a reality show or unscripted show, who the cast is. So if you have those three things working in tandem, you can create a great show. But they all have to be working in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
The budget, and who the cast is.
Okay.
If all those things are working in tandem, then you can generate a good show, and have to have quality people with a great resume, with awesome experience, and that's how you really get a great show. And sometimes that formula doesn't work, to be honest with you, because you've probably seen shows with an awesome cast get canceled.
Mm-hmm.
You hear like an awesome writer or producer is behind it, and it still gets canceled. So the formula doesn't always work. It's not an exact science, but that's giving yourself the best opportunity to win.
Because one thing I noticed about, like I said, TV One, quality television, and when you look across the board of shows that are on major cable networks, your programming is so different. And I'm paraphrasing, because I heard a network executive say that viewers really don't support quality television, so that is why they give them the catfighting shows for the ratings. So why hasn't TV One fallen into that same mindset?
Well, we're in an interesting position because we feel a certain responsibility to our audience, because we see enough content out there that is stereotypical.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are an African American owned network, we feel a particular responsibility to make sure that the portrayal of the people that we represent is a positive one. So sure, we can have conflict in our shows, especially when we talk about unscripted shows, reality shows. Certainly you need that kind of thing to have a juice and sexiness and excitement, but we found a way to deliver that conflict and that sexiness without having to go to demeaning and to demeaning our own people, to demeaning women specifically. So it's possible. It just took a lot of hard work to get there. Now, at the same time, we do run this. We do run what as you say, people demand quality programming, but then when you give it to them, they don't watch it. And that's certainly an issue that we deal with all the time. You have to put on a show like Washington Watch,
mm-hmm.
and those are the shows that are, where Roland Martin is giving a political point of view from a black perspective and for a black audience, and he has a diverse group of folks that are on the air all the time. But then, but we are slowly getting our audience to come back and watch that in bigger numbers. But at the beginning, it was tough. People were not tuning in, even though they said they wanted it, and we see that all the time. So we have the challenge of always finding the right balance of having quality programming, but making sure the audience tunes in. And that's always been our fight. But and as a network, we certainly don't want to ever steer away from that. We're always going to lean towards quality versus sort of giving you the junk food TV that's not going to uplift us.
And one thing I like about TV One, it's not a lot of black exploitation. We don't see a lot. You may see some arguments because people in life, that's just people in life. People, and then you see the resolve, like in R&B Divas. You see that they may have had some issues, but then you also showed the resolve. That's what I like about TV One. So I wanted to commend you all on that as well. Then also, too, you bring me great informational shows like at Life After. Unsung, right. Celebrity crime files. I keep it on TV One, so I'm DVRing everything, everything, because the information is good, and because I love music. That I grew up in a household with music. Then of course I love television, so I like finding out what's going on with the actors. Where have they been? So you guys have really done a good job bringing all that information to me. And because I work with a publicist for TV One, so the Life After people come on to talk about the show and the Unsung. And so it's always good to talk to them to find out where they've been. So I just wanted to say, for me, you are the leader when it comes to television. And when I think of African-American television, the way it should be.
Well, I really appreciate that. And we work hard to deliver that. I really appreciate you saying that. And we're always happy to hear when the audience, when professionals like yourself, people who are on the air, and when the press recognizes that that's what we're doing, then we know we're doing something right. Because even the audience says, when we talk specifically about R&B Divas, we made a very conscientious effort to make sure that we put a show on that's going to entertain the audience, and they're going to be excited about it. We're going to have the conflict. But as you said, that's what happens in families. And sisters argue all the time, but they're not going to hit each other over the head with bottles or because they love each other. If you've got love first, then you can have all the arguments in the world, but you're not going to have the violence. We don't need that part of it.
And I appreciate that. And you were also instrumental in Lisa Ray, the Real McCoy, which brought TV One huge success. What made you want to bring that to TV One, and did you expect it to take off like it did?
You know what? Lisa Ray was brought to us by a producer who we know, who's a friend of the network. And I had a relationship with Lisa Ray prior to her coming there, and I say that relationship as a friend, not as a romantic relationship. But we were friends prior to. I worked on a project with her prior to her being at TV One, and so when she came across my desk as an opportunity to do the show about her, she is such a unique individual that we jumped at the opportunity to sort of be in business with her, because she covers so many different categories. She's from the South Side of Chicago, but she's successful actress. She was the first lady of an island nation, and she had all these things covered. So she was that ghetto fabulous individual that was proud and owned everything she said and everything she did, and she owned it. And that was something the audience could relate to, even if they couldn't necessarily relate to her lifestyle. They could relate to the way that she portrayed herself. They could see that she, if they got the opportunity to do what she did, that's how they would be. And I think I got to say, even though we expected it to do well, I was definitely a surprise that it did as well as it did, because the audience just loved to attach themselves to her, and she's just so relatable. And
she is. And I'm like, okay, where's some more of the Real McCoy? But of course she took off, and now she got another show, so she's doing her thing. But that was a great platform, and it really showed when she was getting back to business, her B2B, and then she ended up landing a Single Lady. So it was just good to see that transition on her show.
To her credit, she said that's exactly what she would do. She said she knew that reality was a stepping stone to bigger and better things for herself, and that's what she's wound up doing. So, we wish her the best all the time, and I still love Lisa Ray and stay in touch with her.
Now, speaking of reality TV, R&B Divas premiered this year as TV One's highest rated show in the network's history. Was anybody anticipating that?
You know what? I got to say, we thought that this was definitely lightning. We thought that lightning in the bottle was going to happen, and it did. We thought that, with all like I told you, when we go through all the research and we put together an amazing cast like we did, you got Faith Evans and Nikki Gilbert and Kiki and Monifa and Selena. You got, like, to me, when we first thought about this and who our audience is, our audience, the demo for our audience is 25 years old to 54 years old, and we say the sweet spot is around 40. So what will 40-year-olds doing? Exactly, that's that sweet spot. So we said, well, who's the sweet spot? And what were those sweet spot women doing 20 years ago or 15 years ago when, when these women of the 90s were really killing it on the charts in the late 80s and the early 90s, and when they were killing it, they had an amazing fan base. So you bring all these folks with different fan bases together, and awesome personalities, and they were, and stars of their own right. And Faith is still doing her thing, and these women now, and none of them stopped doing their thing. It's just that they were sort of under the radar a little bit, with the exception of Faith. And then once we put them together, it was just explosive. And I think the audience received it like we thought we did. This is when we the research worked, the marketing strategies worked, the programming worked, like all the elements of a network put together to put this show on the air, and they all worked, and it was lightning in the bottle, and it was great, and the audience really received it, and we're so proud of it and proud of the ladies.
Yeah, it worked. Like you say, lightning in a bottle. Kept me coming back. So it was great. So you have the awesome opportunity to work with Cathy Hughes, who I admire so much. She's been a guest on the show, and I mean, she and I, we talked over an hour because she was just so awesome. What is it like for you to come up under a vision that was started by an African-American woman and to see the success and be a part of that?
I got to tell you, being a part of it, first of all, being a part of an African-American network, you always feel proud when you can be a part of something that was new. Because I came along at TV1 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, and it was still a young network, and being able to contribute to Miss Hughes' vision in a way that I can, in any way that I can. I feel sort of proud every day to come to work and being able to say that, I had something to do with the images that go across the waves that America is seeing, that Black America is seeing. And so the foundation that she laid, and being able to be a part of that, just makes me, and I'm sure my colleagues, very proud just to be able to say that, we know Miss Hughes, we saw her vision, we worked with her vision, and we were part of it. We are one of the puzzle pieces in her giant puzzle, and to help bring her dreams to come true. So, I have nothing but honor and respect for this woman who's worked so hard to create this amazing company and to be a part of that.
Wow. Tell us, okay, you have a new television show coming to TV1 called Bells. Keith David and Miguel Nunez was on the show talking about it. What did you like about the show to bring it to TV1?
Well, what we wanted to do with Bells was we wanted to create a new twist to the Black comedy. We know that we had a history of comedy in America, Black comedy sitcoms in America, where we had amazing stars like Jamie Foxx and Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and they've all starred in very super successful sitcoms. And we saw, as you can see as a viewer, some of those shows fell off in terms of getting new Black comedies on the air. And then when you saw them, you were kind of disappointed because it was the same old, same old. So we wanted to we wanted an opportunity to produce a show that would be slightly different. And I think what you're going to get from Bells is something different. It's not your raucous, joke, punchline kind of show. This is a show about really amazing stories with really interesting characters, and these characters go through the same kinds of things that everyday people go through. And it's a relatable show. It's kind of a dramedy in a lot of different ways, and we tackle issues that you don't normally tackle on a sitcom. Everything from dietary restrictions in the Black community to atheism and sex and so these kinds of things that are usually joked about on sitcoms, we take it from a very serious point of view, but it's also in a very comedic way. It's a very complex storyline, but because of the way it's done, it's going to be so unique and so different. And I think that's what we're going to be most proud of. We're proud of the fact that we have a different kind of comedy on the air. It's not the typical thing that you've seen before, and I'm hoping that the audience feels the same way that we do about why we're putting it on the air.
Do you ever get disappointed when you think a show is going to be a success and it's not?
Oh, absolutely. It hurts because, a lot of people contribute to why a show goes on air, and a lot of research goes into deciding whether we're going to greenlight a show and put it on air. And someone, from the programming team like myself who puts a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it with the production company and the talent. And, you don't want to, no one ever anticipates it being a bomb. So when you're doing it and the work that goes into it, you really feel like, oh my God, the audience is gonna really come to this, and they're really gonna see it. They're gonna see what we saw. But it's hard to bat 1,000. So you're never gonna have your successes and your failures, but we go into this trying to win every time.
Oh, right. You are the perfect person for this question. And as I'm talking to you, what advice would you give someone who wanted to submit a show for review? Because you are the perfect person to ask, the programming. And if they said, okay, I have this show, how would they submit a show? Now I can ask you because I was asked for so many years to finally take my show to television. So I'm actually producing a show for television after 20 years. And so for people that are like myself that have this same question, how do you even go about submitting a television show? I didn't even think about that till I had you on the line. Can you tell me?
Well, it's a process, and it usually requires, a lot of people have ideas about how to produce, about how the kind of show they want to see on air, right? So, and people have ideas like, I have this idea about this show or that show. And I don't want to give people the impression that just because you have an idea, you don't have a shot.
Right.
But everybody has an idea. But I want to make it clear to you and to the listeners at home that people that produce TV, they are talented. They've been trained to do it. So it takes a certain expertise to do what we do. So even though it's easy to say, let me equate it to basketball. You'll watch a basketball game if you have your favorite team, and you get mad at your favorite player for missing a shot, and you be like, I would have done this.
Right.
We could all say that I would have done that, but if you were on the court, you would have missed the shot. You wouldn't even be on the court because you're not qualified to be in the NBA.
Right.
So I think we're in the same situation here where, there's a lot of training that goes in. People have been doing this for years and have never gotten a show on air, and they train, and they're good at what they do. But so that's the first thing, is be good at what you do. Get the training that you need to produce a television show. Secondly, in order to really pitch a TV show to any network, you really need representation, whether that be an agent or an entertainment attorney, because it's a litigious society we live on, and people often have similar ideas. So a network wants to protect itself and the producer who is bringing the idea, so it makes most sense to have someone representing you, pitching it to a network. Now, you can also pitch it to a production company who you can then in turn partner with, and they will pitch it to the network.
Okay.
So there are a couple different ways to do it, but the first thing is, I would say, make sure you're educated and train and get some training about what it is that you want to do, whether it be as a writer, whether it be as a producer, whether it be even as an entertainment or executive financier. So because doing finance on a network show or on a television show is a lot different than being a finance person on Wall Street. So there's a different element of knowledge you need to obtain, and I think those are the first things you need to do first. Decide what you want to do, get some training, and then write or shoot the show, and then get yourself some representation. But that's the best way to do it. I think there's a rare opportunity where you can get a cold opportunity to walk into an executive's office and pitch your show. But if you do get that opportunity, you want to have it tight and you want to be good at it.
I know that's right. So when you say have a show tight, what are you looking for? So if someone had that opportunity, you only get one shot. That's why I like that song by Eminem. Don't miss that chance. What do you look for as an executive? They have that one shot and they're coming into your office. What are you looking for?
Well, I want to make sure that the person that's pitching knows who TV One is. If I work at TV One or any other network, we're looking for different kinds of programming, and our audience is different, right? So as I said earlier, we're 25 to 54 demo with the 40-year-old sweet spot. So if you come and pitch,
I love that.
If you come and pitch me a show about skateboarding, I know that you haven't done your research on our network. So you've got to do the research on the network you're pitching it to, and so that's the first thing. The second thing is, the idea just has to be good. It has to be entertaining. It has to be well thought out. It has, whether it's a scripted show or an unscripted show, who are the characters? Are they fleshed out? Are they interesting beyond your personal knowledge of it? Do you think the general audience is going to be interested in it? So I've gotten people that pitch me a show about, because their accounting office is so exciting. And I'm like, well, why is that? Everybody's an accountant. Do you guys even talk to each other? And they're like, well, it's funny to me. Well, just because it's funny to you, it's not going to be funny to the rest of us. So It has to be appealing to more than just you and the people that live in your world. You have to think about that. Think outside of the box, about your own box, in terms of whether you think that show is going to be entertaining. And then when you submit the paperwork, whether it be a treatment or what we call a one sheet, which is a description of your show idea, make sure it's written well, make sure it's punctuation, because a lot of executives are different. I'm real particular about grammar and punctuation because that tells me if you're a good writer or not. And I want to know that a producer can write to some degree, even if it's just a couple of paragraphs describing what the show is. Because if you can't write what the show is, if you can't describe it on paper, then chances are you're not going to be able to tell the same story on camera.
Wow, that is awesome. And those are just some great tips, because a lot of people say, I'm going to produce a show and hopefully somebody picks it up, but there is a whole process that needs to be done. And you just summed all that up in a nutshell.
Well, and that's just a little bit. I appreciate that, but yeah, definitely, those are the key things. I think those are the key ingredients. You get that stuff tight, then even if the show is not for TV One, at least I know that this is a good idea, and I can even offer you advice on where to take it to next.
Wow, that's nice. That's nice. So I'm sure a lot of people don't get through your doors. Like you said, you get so many of them. And when you do get through that door, you better be ready. Talking to you making me nervous. I'm like, oh, my God. Well, that's good to know.
There's a lot of folks out there, especially when you think about there are not very many African-American networks. So the African-American folks who are creating content, no, there are only a few places they can take their content. So I understand the hustle. I was there at one point when I was a producer, so I understand that I want to afford people the opportunity because I was afforded an opportunity. So I want to do the same for those coming up. But I also know that you want to have the right training. You want to be able to articulate your ideas well and write them well.
That's good. And before we go, I want people to know, how did you get started in your career? Because, you see an executive, you rose through the ranks, but where did you come from? Can you tell us that?
Yeah, quick. It's kind of a funny story. Well, when I was in college, I had an internship at David Letterman when Letterman was still at NBC. That was my first foray into sort of really getting a taste of what television was like. So when I graduated, I really wanted to work in TV and try to figure that out. But I had, some trouble right after I got out of school. I was trying to find a job right away. So I wound up working in banking for about a year. During that same time, my little sister was going to boarding school.
Wow. And
dropped her off at boarding school with my mother. And she called me the next night and said, hey, I know you're trying to work in TV. My roommate, her high school roommate in boarding school, she said her dad is some important guy at NBC. I think he's like a manager or something. And I said, a manager? What does that mean? Like, that could be anything. But can you ask her, like, who her father is or what he does? And she tells me her dad's name is Bob Wright. Turns out Bob Wright was the president of NBC at the time.
Got it all wrong.
Right. My sister's rubbing shoulders with the head of the network of one of the biggest companies in the world. So I made sure that I was at the next PTA meeting.
I know that's right.
And I met Bob Wright and his wife, and they took me under his wing, and I jumped into the Page program in New York, and it was a 6-month waiting list, but because I had the president on my side, I jumped right in. So that was my first foray into the business. I became a Page in New York, and basically, if you've ever seen any of the late night shows, you can see what Pages do, which is basically, you do audience seating and you compete with other Pages for opportunities within the business, and that's sort of how it created networks. And at one point, I wanted to be in front of the camera, and then determined that it was better for me to sort of go behind the camera, and that's how I wound up in television.
But pages are very important, because when I was a guest on the Tyra Banks show, and I did some stuff over at NBC, they were very nice. They really helped me out when I was walking around. There was stuff I needed. They took me to my room. They were really, really nice with those little red jackets on. I remember those red jackets. If I remember anything, I remember that. No. But they were all. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that was our day job, is that kind of stuff. But what we really were there for is because you get an opportunity to work within the company in different departments, but you competed with those pages. So I wound up working at Saturday Night Live. I worked at NBC Sports. I worked in the president's office. I worked in all the variety of departments in PR. So that's where you really gain the experience. The audience seating was sort of the easy part, and giving tours of NBC, that was the easy part. But we were out there jockeying for positions for usually one position in each department within a network. So that and I would recommend anybody who's young, probably under 30, and want to really sort of get an opportunity to see all levels of the businesses to sort of apply to your network's Page program.
So why can't the 40s in the sweet spots? Why can't we be Pages?
I
thought we were sweet.
It just felt very young. When I was there, as like a young, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
I think as a Page, at that time, I might have made like $18,000 or something that year.
Wow.
So, you still got to live at home.
If you don't mind being broke, be a page while you're young. No responsibility.
Especially living in New York City.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's really good to know. And really, in our business, a lot of times they say it's not what you know, it's who you know, because how you got your foot in there. Your sister thought he was a manager, had no idea he was running things. And so this 6-month waiting list moves you up.
For sure.
Everyone
will tell you a different story about how they got into the business, and mine just happened to be that way. That's how I got my foot in the door. But then I still had to study and learn, and because he wasn't gonna babysit me, and I wasn't his personal son. I was just I became a friend, and he helped me through my career.
And your story is the moral to your story as you're talking. Although you had somebody get you in the door, you had to learn and work your craft to stay in the door.
Absolutely, I had to bust my tail. As a matter of fact, I felt, because I had help from someone as high as he was, head of the network, I felt a little bit more pressure to be good because I didn't want to embarrass his recommendation.
Oh, that's great. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing yourself with us today. And of course, I love the network TV1. And then, of course, when Miss Cathy Hughes been on the show, I just love her. And then you came on. I think that's why people love the network, because what you produce, it comes down from the leadership. And you all, truly exemplify that. And I want to just say thank you, and I commend you. And I definitely look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. And you have a blessed day, too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.